All right, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the Sports Yak podcast. Big trade deadline day in the NBA yesterday. Going away from the Super Bowl for a little bit. I know Garrett is a Rams fan, but Garrett and Dan, how are you guys doing?
Good. My birds are done this year, obviously, but yeah, it's good to see Garrett finally get his team in.
Yeah, they were so bad for so long. So what they've been doing the last 5 years is like almost like a foreign concept to me. But I'm glad the trade deadline has shielded all of my worries and pessimism about them on Sunday. So.
That's good to have a little distraction. You might not. Well, it's almost like you might not win the Super Bowl, but getting James Harden though might even be like kind of almost a little bit maybe better.
I guess we'll start with that. The trade, obviously, with the Sixers getting James Harden, Nets get Ben Simmons, Seth Curry, Drummond, 22 first-round pick, 27 first-round pick. Unlike Arsenal, the Philly 76ers actually did something at the deadline. We'll start with you, Dan. What were your expectations, and are you satisfied with the deal?
My expectations. It's hard to. It's like I been listening to this, kind of all the chatter coming out since, and it's weird because my expectations, I feel like that would have been a better question almost for me like 6 months ago when it was really, the whole situation was still kind of growing and evolving in the moment, but with all this time that's passed, I really didn't have an expectation that they would move him by the deadline. I was kind of just, settled in the fact that they're gonna, they're just gonna, play the season out, see what happens. Kind of, a lot of people calling it a waste of Embiid's, 28-year-old season or whatever. But, I didn't really have a ton. But then, as things kind of started to heat up over the last week or so, you could really you could feel there was going to be some fire with smoke that was coming out from all these different reporters. And eventually, obviously the trade went through yesterday. I'm very happy about it personally. It stinks that you have to give away kind of, some players, but I mean, that's just it's part of the game. You're not going to get James Harden or anybody of, significance for free unless it's free agency. So you're going to have to part with some things. And I'm just really happy that they didn't, let go of Tyrese Maxey or Matisse Thybulle mainly. I can live with Seth Curry and Andre Drummond when, going up there, even though, I really did like both of them as Sixers. And then the picks, this is definitely would have something I would have been maybe a little bit more concerned about like 5 years ago when I was like 21, 22, 5 years ago, I was 24. But when I was younger and I cared a lot about that stuff, and super, detailed intricacies of the trade, I would have cared more. But now it's like, we need to make something happen. We need to contend. I'm not worried about a pick in 2027. So yeah, I'm happy with it. And, we'll see what happens. I think, James Harden is the guy, we've been looking for. So we'll see if, what he and Joe can do with it.
Yeah, I mean, Embiid's going to be in his prime, and hopefully, James Harden is still pretty good. So that pick shouldn't be like too much of a concern. But Garrett, I guess this is better, I think, than people expected. More people were kind of hating on Morey, saying like, you're waiting too long. You're, just do it for like CJ McCollum or do it for, I don't know, Buddy Hield or something like that. So what do you think about that?
I mean, the first thing that comes to my mind when thinking about all this is just weird. The whole Ben Simmons Game 7 last year was weird. Everything in the offseason with his agent and everything was weird. James Harden being upset with the situation in Brooklyn was weird. Kyrie's vaccination status and everything was weird. So it's all just weird. And so them actually getting a deal done to me was like, it's just weird. And almost getting a player of Harden's caliber in Philly is weird. So I kind of was in the thought process of just like, the only thing I could have seen was maybe kind of a 2-trade effect kind of thing where you trade for a piece and picks that you could flip later into said star, whoever that might have been, Beal, Dame, whoever. But again, I am kind of shocked it did happen. And, again, the draft picks weren't the concern. And while I don't think in terms of, it seems like in lieu of trading Maxey or Thibault, you gave up the picks. And while I'm not really the biggest Thibault person, and I'm not sure his long-term fit with this group necessarily is, but given the way the roster is right now, if they didn't have him, I don't know how they're guarding anybody. So I think it was good that they didn't trade him. But again, I'm not 100% sure where they're going long-term with that. And I still think it's kind of a flawed roster. And I think the biggest question for both sides of the trade really is what version of Ben Simmons is showing up, what version of James Harden is showing up. And even if you get the best version of James Harden, I still have some questions about the way the roster is around it to truly win 4 rounds and win a championship. But I think my ultimate takeaway is prior to the trade, the Sixers had a 0% chance at the title because it was a roster still largely built around Ben Simmons, who wasn't playing at all. And frankly, it was off the backs of Joel Embiid having another great season and some of the other guys stepping up. And as Dan and I like to argue about, I don't think it has anything to do with Doc Rivers, but that's just me. But at least this trade you've gone from a 0% chance at a title to some chance of a title. And I'm sure we could talk about it, but I would still probably lean Milwaukee as the favorite in the East. But, you just have to see how the pieces work out. But you went from kind of, where's the season going a little bit? Like Joel has another awesome season, and they have a good record, but I don't see how, maybe a certain matchup you could win a playoff round or two, but I just didn't see any title aspirations. But now they're back.
Yeah, even before, I think when they had Butler and Simmons available and healthy, they just had a very weird roster. But I feel like this is more like a step in the right direction of building a actual fully final contending team. Do you agree with that?
I think there are pieces there, but it's just like everything, when it comes down to it, right, is two-way ability in the biggest moments, right? And while Thibault is elite defensively, he obviously has his offensive limitations. Tyrese Maxey, he's only in his second year, but he has his defensive limitations. So, that it ends up being, the teams that make the Final Four, have the best two-way ability possible. And certainly Joel fits into that category. But so, I'm curious to know how this roster now kind of molds around James Harden's skill set, which is certainly different than anything they've had. But I think it just should be interesting, and just, maybe a buyout guy here or there. I think I kind of given, and we might talk about with Milwaukee's trade deadline, and it kind of seems they set themselves up with roster spots to go get whoever that top buyout person might be. But as of right now, I'm still a little skeptical of this year, their title ability, I guess, their ability to win the whole thing. And I think what's looming is potential Tobias Harris trade in the offseason, depending on how this stretch run goes. And, the ability to flip Tobias for maybe pieces that fit better around Joel and Harden. But I'm trying to keep my expectations a little tame.
And that's kind of just, that's the Philadelphia fan in you. We've been beaten down over the years, especially the Sixers fans. It really has been 20 years now, or I guess 21 years since we've been to Eastern Conference Finals. So you instinctively have a bit of doubt, as to how the team's going to perform. But for me, like Garrett's kind of saying, before the trade, you're like, I don't believe this team's can really contend at all. There's some nights where they show up and like the game against Memphis where Embiid wasn't in, but the rest of the team showed up and they played well and brought home a W. But you can get excited about those little moments and see growth from players like Maxey and Thibault and whoever else that you want to name. But in the back of your head, it's not really going anywhere. Once the Harden trade kicks in, you got a superstar, a guy we haven't had anyone like that. Even Jimmy Butler, with all his talents and strengths and everything that he brings to the table. I've always thought Harden, and most people I think they've always thought Harden to be a better player, and certainly a better offensive player, and one that Joel's never played with. One a lot of Sixers fans who might even be on the younger side have never even seen before. We haven't really seen somebody like that since Allen Iverson or those days. So I'm excited about it. I think we put ourselves in a better position than we were before the trade. I'm interested to see how like Garrett had mentioned as well, how some of the other role players on the team kind of like fit into the scheme with the Harden's insertion, and like Tyrese Maxey, he's going to have to do a lot more off ball. He's going to have to do a lot of catch and shoot stuff. And quick, and Tobias Harris is going to have to be a quick decision maker as well. Harden's a great passer. He's going to make plays for his teammates, and he brings a lot of great things to the table. It's just up to these younger guys or more Tobias Harris more experienced, but it's up to these kind of guys to kind of shift their play a little bit to make it balance and flow as best as it can. I'm not really concerned at all about his fit with Embiid. I think they balance each other out as well as you can from a pairing standpoint.
Yeah, I mean it's obviously gonna come down to Tobias and Maxey making plays, because I feel like Harden and Embiid, maybe Harden a little bit less so, but like Embiid brings it in the playoffs. Harden is kind of known for choking a little bit or like sulking in the playoffs, I guess. But I feel like with a motivated star next to him, like Embiid, he's not going to really have that excuse anymore to not put up big numbers. But yeah, I mean, I feel like last year prepared Maxey for this, and he got a little bit of his own shine in the first half of this year. But you think he's going to be a key part, right? I feel like him and Tobias are going to have big games.
Yeah, totally. I mean, for me, Maxey's been playing great all year. It's much better than anyone would have expected, I think. And I think his reaction to the trade was great. He's saying like, pretty much, I'm here. I'm down for whatever role that they need me to slide into. I can do it. I think he was like, I'll play backup center for Embiid if I have to, and stuff like that. Like, but the thing that I
might
really
have
love
to
and appreciate. The thing I love and appreciate about Maxey is his just willingness to do whatever it takes, to win games. He doesn't care. He puts in all the work, before games, after games, off season. He wants to be better. He wants to be a great player. And I think that being around Joel probably has helped him see that a little bit clearer in his head and see what it takes to be that player. So I don't think you're going to see any type of ego or pushback from Maxey about having to adjust his role. I think he's going to embrace it and make the best out of the situation. And I could see Tobias Harris, kind of being the same way, knowing what a little bit about his approach to the game mentally, and kind of how he looks at things. I think he's the same way. He wants to win. He's gotten criticized, more so than ever this year, having to be kind of the second or third guy. In on the offense in this team, and he had that little moment where he I don't remember, what did he do, like this, or did he he pumped up the crowd or something like that after they booed him, but he got through it. There's other guys out there, we're not going to name names, who can't take criticism and rejected at every step and will not embrace any type of accountability for themselves. Tobias Harris and the guys I think that we have on our roster now do embrace accountability. And, I'm looking forward to seeing them all work together and, seeing as far how far they can take it. So I think the start, like, I do think the pieces are there in the starting five to do some real damage. I am just mostly concerned, I think, with kind of losing that bench depth with losing specifically Andre Drummond, who I think has been great this year. And, Seth Curry, who's, shoots the hell out of the ball, score the hell out of the ball. It's going to be sad to see those guys go, but you got to do what you got to do.
I mean, at the end of the day, you're still improving your team because you're losing basic zero, and you're adding James Harden. So right. even if he covers up for Curry, I feel like, I mean, that's more than enough.
Yeah, and I think like I was kind of getting at with Tobias is like being in that he's not the second best scorer on a championship team, and I don't even know if he's the third best. Like, he's a fringe third best player. And having him in basically in the second spot all season long, and really, I mean, even last year too, with like Simmons, it's not like Simmons is outscoring him. You'd say he's a more valuable player, but Tobias, was in that kind of second scorer role, and now with Harden coming in, who's he's only averaging I think like 23 a game this year, but who's perennial, close to a 30 point per game scorer. I think that takes a lot of the burden and stress and pressure off of Tobias and allows him to really play his to his truest self and to his truest ability. So I'm excited to kind of see that as well, where the pressure's a little bit off him. He can play a little bit more freely and not have to feel that pressure of being like the second guy.
For sure. I mean, I feel like that's a similar thing with Simmons too. I feel like he's the fourth or fifth option on offense too.
Yeah. And I think the thing, that like you really always want to say like, and especially Sixers fans, this is how we've been over the last 6 or 7 years since the process started. Is like you want to have every transaction be like, oh, we freaking fleeced them, we killed them, we dominated that trade, we got everything we wanted, gave up nothing at all. And I truly think like from at least with this trade, like everybody kind of, and people have been saying it, like, but everybody kind of got what they wanted and what was needed at the time. Did I expected it? We would have been able to get a player like James Harden back? No, but the patience proved to work, and I do think this is a fair deal all around, and I don't think either side could be really like too upset about what they were received and what they gave off.
So starting five is probably going to be Maxey, obviously Harden. You think Tybal or Danny Green starts?
I think Tybal. I think they need his defense.
Yeah. I mean, they almost, and that's what it's so weird when you have these like two younger guys like Maxey and Tybal, where it's like you can't let Maxey go because he just has blown up so much and taken such a nice step over the last year or two. But like Tybal is so important to this team, not with Simmons gone. Like Garrett said, to start the pod. Like if you don't have Tybal, I mean, our best wing defender at that point is probably Danny Green, who's like
he's 36 years old.
He's 36. If you watch him,
he's more of a secondary. Yeah. He's more of like
I would be
a lesser version of prime Robert Covington, kind of like secondary, off ball.
He's not like a quick on ball, point of attack defender at this point in his career, and he's not moving, very well. He still can shoot the ball. But you just can't
like
rely
25 minutes a night. Yeah.
You can't rely on him to be the guy. Like he'd be perfect to me to bring off the bench, ideally. As that like kind of a six man who can shoot the ball and he's not a liability on defense. And like Garrett said, maybe playing like 18 to 25 minutes a night, maybe. Just depending on who he's going to have to go up against. But without Matisse, I mean, you're pretty much screwed defensively, especially like with the trade being Ben going to another team in conference in division. Like you're trading both your best defenders and Seth Curry, Andre Drummond, great depth pieces for James Harden. You're getting no defense back, and you'd be pretty screwed if that was the case. So I'm glad they did hold on to the younger guys. But yeah, and then so you got Tyrese Maxey, you have James Harden, you have Matisse Thybulle or Danny Green, I think, but I lean strongly towards Thybulle, and then you got Harris and Embiid. That's to me a great strong starting five.
Yeah, I think that's as good as any starting five in the East. Sorry, Garrett. But I'll get your thoughts too. Yeah. What were you gonna say?
No, and what I find curious is that, and I guess I've really noticed it in the last. They're probably like their last 5 games is that it's almost seemed like they've adjusted their approach in like crunch time and I actually, there's not a lot I agree with Doc Rivers on from a coaching standpoint or whatever, but it's been the last the last 5 games they played. It's been a very good crunch time offense is kind of like Curry. It was Curry, Tobias, and Joel of like 3-man action, two guys off the ball. You 3 create the action, and if you need to kick it out to. In this case, it was George Yang, kind of in the closing 5, or Danny Green, or Matisse, either in a dunker spot or in the corner, or whatever. But kind of like those 3 create the action, and the 2 other players play off of that. But I was getting vibes of Ben Simmons a little bit with Tyrese Maxey in some of these crunch time things where he'd bring the ball up, he'd pass it to the wing to Seth, to Tobias, or even Joel, and then he'd go run off and sit in the dunker spot. Well, at least the one thing you could say about Ben Simmons in that spot was he could catch a lob for a dunk. Like, but I don't know what the purpose of Tyrese is kind of in that crunch time lineup. So to go off like
he's been a good shooter this year though.
Yeah.
He needs to do it more. Like he has a good percentage, but if you're gonna, especially now with James Harden in town, if you're gonna, be on the floor when it matters most and teams respect you, you got to keep shooting.
Yeah.
Because that's my biggest question with Maxey is that, and again, he's only in year 2. He's so young. He's got so much time ahead of him. But for a team that's trying to win the title right now, this kind of, to me, isn't set up the best way for his development because he clearly worked better with Andre Drummond, classic high pick and roll, Drummond rim rolls, and Maxey going downhill, going towards the basket. Joel is more of a create from the low post or create from the high post, pick and pop, maybe, roll to like the foul line extended, whatever. And while they've improved on, their 2-man game a lot in 1 year, to me, it was pretty obvious. It's just, he naturally fits better with Drummond. And so I would get annoyed where, you're running some of these second unit lineups without Maxey and without Joel, and just like, no, maximize your time with Maxey with the, the backup center with a more space floor and whatnot. So I'm almost curious to know, like, again, with this idea of, okay, your new 3-man trio in a crunch time setting is now Tobias, Harden, and Joel. Is Tyrese Maxey really on the floor? Like, because if I'm in an opposing defense, make him make shots, like he's shooting a high percentage, but like, in the guts of the game, are you expecting him to, make that open 3 if he's, if he outspaces the floor, they help off of him. And then, and again, only year 2, smaller guy, he tries hard, but he's obviously more of a liability on the defensive end. And this is less of a concern now because Curry's in Brooklyn, but, it still was the idea of you have 2 shorter, 2 guys 6'3" and under at your 1 and 2 spots. So I'm kind of curious to know, like, and again, it's kind of matchup dependent, but it's like, do you take Tyrese out and have Thibault and Yang as the other 2 guys, or Danny Green or Furkan Korkmaz? Again, very matchup dependent, but like, that's the part I'm high on Maxey's upside, but with Harden and Joel, and again, Maxey in year 2, I'm kind of questioning his development right now, because, it's not maximizing the strengths he has right now. And, as he more time in the league, more time to develop as an off-ball guy, but, guy looking out for the future, this probably isn't the best for him. And I'm curious to know, like, when push comes to shove in a big game, is he going to be out there basically hanging out in the dunker spot while the other 3 are creating?
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they play 4 wings and then Embiid in certain matchups when they need a little bit more shooting. Even Niang or, Danny Green or whatever, like you said. But you think if they stagger more, if Harden sits or, they'll play maybe Maxey and Embiid maybe a little bit at the end of the first quarter or something like that.
Well, if Doc has any lineup that doesn't have one of Joel or Harden in it, then to be fired on the spot. But knowing Doc Rivers and the way he doesn't stagger lineups at all and has really bad all bench units that cut a 15-point lead to a 5-point lead in a matter of 2 minutes, I wouldn't be shocked if that happens. But
who is the backup center now?
Probably the guy I've been clamoring for. And in fairness to Drummond, he's been really good the last month, but I've been clamoring for some more Charles Bassey minutes. And I like him only in the respect of what I was kind of saying about, like, Drummond, of saying classic pick and roll rim runner guy. Mm-hmm. And so I'm really hoping that, and this is sort of because of the trade deadline, it kind of Daryl forced Doc's hand of like, well, you're going to have to play one of these 2 young guys, or he'll play washed up Paul Millsap. But, that's probably what will happen. But I would love to see one of those 2 get some minutes and see Tyrese try to create stuff off the second unit. Even James Harden playing.
Yeah, Harden or Maxey with a rim runner is pretty solid.
So I would love to see, Paul Reed as a small ball 5 in some backup lineups, or Charles Bassey as the backup 5, because, and that's been one of my criticisms of whether Daryl or prior regimes, of a long-term viable backup center behind Joel. And so, and again, roster, you can get centers easily. So getting, consecutive years of getting rosters on them, for the minimum, and Drummond was obviously a home run this year while he played. Dwight had his stretches last year, guys years before, but Joel's never going to play 82 games, and he's never going to play, 45 minutes a night. So, getting someone cost-controlled, younger guy to develop behind him and be able to work in maybe different lineups. So I look at it as more of okay, this is an open opportunity for 2 young guys to maybe now establish as the backup big. And, as opposed to, say, a Robin Lopez who might get bought out, or, somebody like that, I would prefer a younger rim running kind of backup big than a more stationary, again, like a Robin Lopez type, just because it doesn't bode well with the skill sets of your 2 lead ball handlers, because they thrive in the pick and roll rim run kind of spots.
Yeah, I totally agree with Garrett's sentiment here. And I also would just contribute on top of that, thinking about the ball handlers that, adding Harden to the mix on that, I think you can see a similar effect that, when Harden plays with, if he's got a guy that can really, rim run, pick and roll, is athletic and catch lobs, he's going to make him into a better player. Similar with how we're seeing Chris Paul this year turning Biombo, and that's kind of what he's done over his career. He's turned kind of some of these bigs who maybe aren't as flashy or as well known into really effective players, just because he knows how to play the game. And get
Biombo this year. He got signed off the street 2 weeks ago, and he's like Bill Russell out there.
So and knowing, I know Charles Bassey has been coached well throughout his career. I know he knows, how to play the game. He's athletic, he's young, he can roll, and he can run to the rim. I don't see why, whether it's Maxey or Harden, he can come in and show even more than what he's shown. And in his minutes that he's gotten this year already. I think having those kind of guys, and more so Harden, is just a huge boost to some of these more fringe kind of guys, but who do a certain, who play a certain role, do certain things on the floor that can be elevated by Harden's presence.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it'll probably come down to who he has most chemistry with, whether it's Bassey or Reed, or I wouldn't be surprised if even Tobias maybe plays a little small ball 5. Has he ever done that this season?
I don't think so.
They've only had a couple games where Embiid might have been out or whatever, where they had to put George Niang basically as the 5, and they never go well. And this is also kind of part of my criticism even last year and a little bit of this year, is kind of the only option with them has only been a backup traditional 5 type, and never getting anybody. And again, these guys are harder to come by. You're a true stretch 5 type, but they've never had the variability to go small. Like in theory, Ben Simmons, I guess, could have been like that, but that just wasn't strong enough. Because
it's not his personality, I think.
But in theory, right, you should have been able to go small with that, but you really couldn't. So part of my concerns, even to the playoffs last year and years prior, is the inability of flexibility of your lineup. Whereas okay, I love what the Clippers are doing in terms of how many guys now do they have between 6'5" and 6'9" who can play all different positions. And basically you look at a team like
Toronto as well.
Yeah, it's just, and every team is built differently. And, I don't know how Thaddeus Young's going to guard Joel Embiid in a potential playoff series or anything like that. But just I just still not having the option of going small and not being absolutely destroyed is kind of one thing that has held them back in years past, and even this year as well. And I thought maybe you could get away with that as Paul Reed is the backup 5, but Doc is clearly not a fan of his. And I don't know if I was maybe Paul Reed's agent, I might have been asking for a trade during this deadline because just for whatever reasons, and we're not at practice every day, but it doesn't seem like Doc's the biggest fan of him.
We should talk about this a little bit from the Brooklyn side. Obviously, Harden wanted out of there, so they had to make a deal. I don't think they wanted to make a deal. I saw the stat they only played 16 games together with Kyrie, Harden, and Durant, which is pretty ridiculous considering they were up 2-0 on the Bucks and like cruising and about to destroy them. They were blowing them out in the first two games of those. I think it was Eastern Conference maybe semis because they played Atlanta. But yeah, I mean, we should talk about it from the Brooklyn side. I know, Dan, you're not a big fan of Simmons, but he definitely helps them on the defensive side.
Yeah, I mean, he's gonna do his thing. I'm sure he'll be the same exact player he's always been when he gets there, and he's playing in the net whenever he plays. I mean, like, look, he's an elite defensive player. He's gonna be able to go in there and fill a role, not have the pressure to score or do as much of the offensive things as maybe I guess he had here. But it's just going to be interesting to see what his willingness is to fit into their system. Harden didn't necessarily want to go there, I don't think, and he didn't love I don't think having to share the ball on the perimeter with Irving and Durant like that. So that's why he wanted to come out. But I think that you're going to have some similar fit issues with Ben Simmons. Like he was forceful in Philadelphia and wanting to be a point guard, bring the ball up the floor, have the ball in his hands a lot. He didn't want to play, like kind of the big position. He didn't want to play a forward or a center position on offense. And he's not going to guard us. I don't think he's going to guard any centers on defense either. So it'll be interesting to see, if he's done any type of type of self-discovery, or he's reevaluated the way he's handled things or approached situations in his career, and taking the time to explore those things, and if he's going to come into this new opportunity with the same mentality that he's always had, or if he's going to turn to a new page. I think obviously he's got all the talent in the world. It's just about application of that talent and willingness to learn and work with other people, and not just with doing what's you think is best for yourself.
Garrett, are you high in Brooklyn? You think they're better than the Sixers?
I would say maybe past this year. To me, the big problem with them right now for the rest of this season is that because of their losing streak, they're in the play-in range now. So you're not looking at a higher seed. And obviously with the New York City thing with status, with vaccination status, and Kyrie Irving and him only playing in half the games. And then to me, it seems like the logical thing with what to do with Simmons. And again, nobody knows what kind of, if he's even remotely near game shape, mentally ready to play, any of that. But I'd imagine they wouldn't even throw him out there until KD's back. And that's, another couple weeks away at that. But in the meantime, right, you're running lineups out there with Seth Curry, Patty Mills, and, Andre Drummond. So like, I look at it as like, it's going to be very interesting to see how the rest of this regular season plays out for them, given that KD's not going to be back for around another month. And maybe it's something where if they figure it out towards the end of the regular season, like look out for them in the play-in round, and then, depending on matchups or whatever. But I think they made their future a lot better, obviously picking up the extra draft picks, but also they're not going to be the ones that have to give Harden the massive extension that he wants. And, Kyrie can be a free agent. And if it's really that bad, then okay, now you build around KD and Simmons a little bit, and you have some extra ammo to go around.
How many years is left on the Seth Curry contract too? Because I know that's just a great contract.
He's only got one more year.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I mean, he's on a cheapie, so if you can keep him around too, that bodes well. But he could end up being expensive.
No, and then the other thing is, and depending on how the season goes, is he makes 8.5 next year. You could flip that for somebody who might fit better, like depending on how this all goes. So I'm more down on this year's, what it's going to what it looks like for Brooklyn for the rest of this season, but like going forward, it looks rosier just because of, and again, like it's the NBA, anything could happen. Maybe, Kyrie's got a player option for next year. He could opt in, but then you might not be paying him after that, or he might opt out, and then you just create, and build another roster around it. But if Harden truly was going to leave, then this is obviously a really good return for them and set them up better for the future. But I like the Sixers more this season, but I can't say that going forward.
Yeah, I would say Milwaukee and Philly have the best odds for the East right now. Obviously Miami is still pretty good. But in terms of matchups, how has Philly guarded Giannis? And do you think that they have a good chance of doing that in the playoffs?
So I don't know if the Sixers were the first team to really do this, but they put Embiid on him for a couple of the matchups. And I don't know if they were the first team to just say, screw it, we're putting our center on him. And then whoever guard Lopez out on perimeter. But if they play them tomorrow, it's either like, there's only two people that are going to guard him. It's going to be either Thibault or it's going to be Joel. And it's partially clouded because Lopez has not played at all this year, and that affects the way they run certain lineups. But frankly, they don't have anybody else to even remotely throw at him. But I'd argue the same thing on the other end. They don't have anybody to put it on Joel either. So, but, part of their problem is, for the most part, Joel shoots threes and he makes threes, but that's not the biggest part of his game. And then, the whole idea of three is worth more than two. And so running Giannis at the 5 and a spread floor around him, that changes things. But that would be their only shot is, Thibault, you guard him. If you, take 6 fouls, you take 6 fouls. But basically, you shadow him. We'll figure out everything else. And if not, it's got to be Joel because, again, they don't have anything.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm Philly, I like my matchup against anybody in the East because I don't see anybody that can guard Embiid.
Yeah, nobody.
But then the question is, can the other 4 people guard anybody on the other team?
Yeah, and
glad Boston picked up Daniel Tice so Embiid can run him over again.
Yeah. Hey man, we got freaking James Harden, dude. We used to have Isaiah Cannon and Hiles Thompson as our backcourt. We got James Harden. People are not talking about it enough. I know that it's a huge trade and it just happened yesterday, but people are not talking about the fact that Sixers got James Harden. Like all the conversation is like Ben Simmons is like going to be so well set up there in Brooklyn and all this. Like you're going to have to deal with not just Joel Embiid, but like maybe a top 3 or top 5 scorer of all time, James Harden, as well on the perimeter. Like,
I think people don't want, like, they don't have that image in their head anymore, I guess, of James Harden.
Yeah, the only problem with Harden, and again, if he shows up tomorrow and he's motivated and all that, that'll then we'll be talking about the Sixers the rest of the season. But
yeah, if he has a really good first game, he's automatically there. People are going to be hyping up the Sixers like crazy.
But it's all the baggage of the past, right? He was right to want to leave Oklahoma City to go to Houston to do his own thing, and that was the right call. But then spatting with other superstars, with Dwight, with Russell, with Chris Paul.
Yeah.
And obviously I would put the blame on Kyrie for what happened in Brooklyn with all that and why he wanted to leave again. And he's obviously put on a couple pounds in the last 2 years. So again, like this also isn't the same James Harden of a couple years ago where he's an offense all to himself. But again, I think it's just so much dependent on, okay, is this now where he wants to be? Because he's been unhappy all these other stops. Is this going to be the one place where he's like settling in and him and Joel are going to be the new version of Kobe and Shaq,
I think he wanted to come here last year. From what I'm reading out there is like, he wanted to come here last year, for Titta and, the Rockets weren't willing to make a deal with Morey because of the way things had ended there between them. And basically, used Philly as leverage in those negotiations that they were having with Brooklyn to, acquire all those young players and picks and whatnot. in exchange for Harden, and Harden didn't want to go to Brooklyn to begin with. He wanted to come to Philly. So, I can see why, if you get sent to a place you don't want to go from the jump, and you're not happy there, like, of course you'd want to move again relatively quickly because you didn't want to go there in the first place.
And he was still
might have been
pissed.
different if if Kyrie didn't get hurt and he didn't get hurt himself last year. There's a banner hanging at Barclays Center, right? Like it could all have been different. And, and if Kyrie just had gotten vaccinated, then maybe it's different this year,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he was saying in his press conference a lot that, Kyrie, it would be helpful to have Kyrie here and stuff like that. Like he was always going off about that. But I guess, Dan, what's your top 4 in the East right now? Like in terms of playoffs, not like standings or anything.
Do I have to do like in order or just just the top 4 teams in no specific order?
I guess rank them.
I'll have to put Milwaukee number 1, I think, just because they were, returning champions. Still at most of the same weapons. A couple, they made a little trade, and I think they brought in like Serge Ibaka, right? So, he's definitely past his prime, but he's been a solid player throughout his career. I'd put the Bucks at number 1. I'd put the Sixers at number 2. I'd put the Brooklyn Nets at 3, and probably the Miami Heat at 4. Like, my thing about this, between like the difference between the Brooklyn Nets and the Sixers right now is there's no chance Ben Simmons in the playoffs is going back to Philadelphia and showing up on the floor to play. There's no chance that ever happens. Kyrie Irving can't play, as with the vaccine mandates as of right now, can't play in New York games. And so, I think there's, problems there, but I ain't scared of Ben Simmons at all. I mean, like that's however many players are in the NBA, he's the last one on the list I'm scared of. If as a Sixers fan, as a Sixers player, any of it, we've seen it for the last 3 or 4 or 5 years, however long it's been. Not scared of him at all. He folds in every big moment that there ever has been. Takes no accountability for it. I can't wait to see actually maybe the toxic nature that he brings to the Brooklyn Nets locker room, and maybe causes that even more problems there. And maybe Kyrie's out, maybe Durant's out, maybe everyone's out, and then it's just a Brooklyn Nets team with like, I don't know, what's that guy, Kessler Edwards or something like that, like Walker Kessler, one of those guys, like just Ben Simmons and a bunch of role players. And hey, dude, Ben, you finally got your team. You all the pressure's off. You got your team with a bunch of bums. You guys can stink now, and you can make $35 million a year, and there's no pressure on you at all. And there you go. That's exactly what you want. That is exactly what he wants. So,
Garrett.
Yeah, I'm not quite to that extreme.
That's not even extreme, man. That's temporary.
Yeah. I like.
Just respond facts.
There are definitely, I think, some underlying like mental health things that are definitely there, and not to the like he's making it seem like that's like the only reason, because I know there's some weird family stuff in the past. So, I'm not going to, totally go there, but how
does that bring mental health problems to you though? That situation, it had nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
We'll see how quickly he comes back, to be honest. Like,
yeah.
He's already traveling with the team.
Yeah.
What can you say?
Yeah, no. So yeah, so to get back on topic, I guess
he's number 10. He's Ben 10. He's already got his new number.
Are you serious?
The rebrand, dude. He's number 10 now. It's Ben 10. It's like an anime comic, I guess, or some type of comic book. He's named
Cartoon Network, man. Come on.
It's just a guy living in another reality. That's all it comes down to, All
right, go ahead with your top 4, Garrett.
So I agree with Dan. Milwaukee's number 1. They've been off and on this year, obviously with injuries and whatnot, and like they haven't put together the killer 10-game, winning streak in a row, whatever. But it's still Giannis. It's still, as long as they got their main 3 and enough quality from the role players, like they have the championship pedigree now. I just think maybe you could argue that in theory, the Sixers could be more talented, but again, this Milwaukee group has been together. Could anybody beat them in a 7-game series? Sure, but I just think they're the best of the group. I'm leaning Miami number 2, just because of continuity, a little bit of continuity. I just think, when it comes down to it, some of their guys, with Lowry, Jimmy, they could be clutch at the end of, big playoff games or whatever. Big fan of Eric Spoelstra. And I think I'm splitting hairs a little bit. I would say Sixers 3rd, but I'm just going to go with continuity for right now. 4, I'd actually go Chicago right now, because again, I'm a little bit lower on Brooklyn for what they are for the remainder of this season. So I really like what Chicago's done, and I think they'll get to a point where you get Lonzo, Caruso back for the playoff stretch, and just been liking the way they're playing, and you got clutch scorers in Levine and DeRozan. So I kind of like their potential title viability a little bit more right now than Brooklyn, which I think is just very shaky at the moment.
Dude, DeMar DeRozan's been on an absolute heater this year.
Yeah, I think
he's crazy, man. He played against the Sixers a week ago, I think. Went for 48 or something.
Going back to our point of how they had no one, because Matisse was out for that game. They didn't have prayer.
And that's the other thing I think you have to put into consideration with ranking the teams and projecting where they everyone's going to finish up at the end of the year. You always have to say barring injuries. We know Embiid's had an injury history. Durant has had an injury history. A lot of these players have had some injuries. So hopefully everyone stays healthy and solid through to the end of the season. And that's not an excuse for anything, but you always got to factor that in.
Yeah, I mean the East is definitely, I feel like, the better conference this year. They have really good teams. I wouldn't be surprised if any of those teams make the finals.
I think 1 through 8 is pretty strong.
Yeah,
because you've had Boston, Toronto shoot up the Rams lately. I know Charlotte's had a little bit of a rough stretch, but
Cleveland, the land.
Cleveland, yeah. No, it's a really strong conference this year, which is, given the past 20 years, it's kind of the opposite. Where 1 through 8 in the West used to be a complete juggernaut. The 8 seed was a 50-win team, and it's kind of funny how this year it's the last play-in spot is 8 games under 500 in the West.
Yeah.
What's funny is Cleveland has Jared Allen, who's probably the next best defender, I guess, on Embiid, and they got LeVert from Indiana. They got the pieces from the Harden trade, basically.
Essentially, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, the next biggest, I guess that was by far the biggest deal that happened in the trade deadline. I don't even know what would be second. Maybe I guess Porzingis. I was pretty surprised that Dallas moved on from him.
Yeah, I mean, it's just sad to see. Kind of Porzingis came into the league hot. Everyone at that when he came in saying it's better than Embiid, all this kind of stuff for a couple of years there. Had some unlucky injury stuff, and you almost forget about him sometimes. So he's even still out there. It's hard to forget about him because he's 7'10". But
how electric he was in the Garden the first year. Yeah,
he was electric, man. And I really did see big career for him, but and maybe it's still there. He's still playing. Obviously, I'm not saying he's done or anything, but just not at the level of a player that you might have thought he was going to be. After that first year or two in New York. And then the Wizards just traded Spencer Dinwiddie and who cares? You know what I mean? Who cares? So that trade is kind of sad.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's kind of perfectly fine on the Wizards end because Bertans had a bad contract. He wasn't even playing right now when they needed help. Dinwiddie, I guess, just wasn't a good fit with the team or whatever with Beal. And this kind of screams of a deal just trying to appease Beal because him and Dinwiddie weren't exactly getting along. And if the rumor is correct, of just saying he wanted Sabonis and just get another really tall European guy. in there, kind of, do that. That trade.
Oh, I guess we should talk about the Kings.
No, yeah. So I was just kind of transition that to kind of the three teams that I feel like there's shuffling the deck chairs on the Titanic. One, the Wizards, because I just think they're a classic. They should, and under Ted Leonsis, they're never going to do it, but they should kind of just reset rather than, and like, where are you going when you give Bradley Beal this massive extension for a guy who, for as good as some of the teams have been in the East, there's like, it's kind of a relatively weak all-star class, and Bradley Beal was not even remotely in discussion. And what you're going to, give him the biggest deal in NBA history, because of the max number, salary cap going up and all that. So
he is out for the season, but yeah.
Yeah.
But
like, what are they even doing down there, man? What are you doing?
I mean,
like that was a Simmons destination for Beal, obviously. I mean,
I thought that was a log. Actually, I actually thought that was kind of logical for both teams. That would have been, Beal gets to be in the better destination. Wizards, one thing I'll say about Ben Simmons, he's one hell of a floor raiser in the regular season. That would have been classic. Ted Leo, just get as many regular season wins as possible, whatever. So I actually thought that was the best. Like both teams are getting what they want out of this kind of deal. But and then, like the Wizards, it's just like same thing with like, I don't know what the Kings are doing. I don't know what the Pelicans are doing. Like, I don't know what you're really building.
Portland.
Yeah. Yeah. And Portland too. Just, again, shuffling the deck chairs. It's like, what are you trying to do here?
It's just a waste. And, you're just waiting. It's at the end of the day, your fandom is like somewhat self-serving. You want the best players in the best situations. I want players on my team that are great. I want the best guys on our team in Philly. And you just have these guys out here in Portland and Washington and, some of these different franchises. And they're just like, you're just wasting players' careers. I get you're
even the Lakers, to be honest.
The Lakers, you're holding, like, I get, you're not holding these players against their will. Like most of them are signing these deals with you guys, but it's like, what is the point of this? Like, what are you doing holding on to Dame Lillard and being like, making these, what if they're true, making promises to him, like we're, building a contender, blah, blah, blah. And then it's like, you go out and get like,
Josh Hart.
like you go out and get, what's the dude? Oh, man, I'm freaking blanking on his name. I don't like, that's the whole point though. Is like, you go out and get these dudes that like you think about for 1 second, and then you're like, okay, that guy's not doing much to change the situation there.
Tony Snell?
Yes.
Oh, no.
Yes. Tony Snell. Like,
oh, no, he went to New Orleans.
But then he's gone. You know what I mean? Like, then he's gone though in the same year. Like, I just don't know what they're doing. And then I don't get why the players, just kind of, I mean, it's easier to tolerate when you're making like $45 million a year or something like Dame Lillard is, but still, like, as a competitor and as, basketball players, like you would assume that they would want to be in better situations, or like that time after time when they keep getting made, like these promises made to them, that they wouldn't just, keep going along for the ride. But
I actually, like, of all those teams, like the four teams I mentioned, I'm actually the most optimistic in a sense with the Blazers, only because they traded most of the good parts of their roster away. It's like, if you tank for 1 year and you get some lottery luck on your side, and I'm not a big college basketball person.
But do you think they trade that? Like, let's say they get a Chet Holmgren or something like that.
Like if they trade him for whatever player. No, even then you can reset your, life cycle a little bit. Like, I just think the Blazers to me are like kind of the one team in that group I mentioned where New Orleans is fighting for a play-in spot. Sacramento's fighting for a play-in spot. Washington, I guess in theory they are, or whatever. But like now, if the Blazers like bottom out the rest of the year, and again, the possibility of a top 5 pick, that's what, like, I'm high on what Indiana did at the deadline. I'm not the biggest bonus guy, but the idea of, again, like, it's always like, oh, they try to be competitive in their own market. They haven't picked like top 5 in the draft since like the 80s. And just kind of, I think this is, I call it like kind of like the Tim Duncan effect, or like, you get injuries, things happen, whatever, you're bad for 1 season. So like Indiana, all their guys are hurt now. You made this trade, Sabonis, you're your theoretical best player got dealt. It's like Miles Turner's hurt, Brogdon's been in and out, TJ McCollum's out for the year. So it's just like, just tank the rest of this season, get a high draft pick, and then do everything to be good next season. Like Indiana, this is your one chance. You've been hurt all year. You have a good coach. You've reset your roster with some younger pieces, and just bottom out for 1 year, get a high pick, and then if you want to make win now moves and whatnot, then do that. But if you're in a position, because with the play-in, there's more buyers and more teams kind of going for, like like the Kings, like the Pelicans, you have the chance to, and I would say more based on injury or circumstances of the season. Like if you can bottom out, just do it. Get a high pick, and then be like, tell your fans like, oh, that was a one-off bad year. We got our high draft pick, and we can just reset and be better tomorrow.
That's what the Magic thought they were doing when they traded Dwight Howard, and they haven't. They've been tanking for like the past 12 years.
That's a wild place, Orlando. Basketball in Orlando. That's a wild scene. Not good. Certainly not good.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Like, if you tank, but you don't hit on the draft picks, like at least Philly hit on Simmons and Embiid. Noel was kind of an iffy player, and I forget who else they took. Fultz. I mean,
Okafor.
Yeah, Okafor. Yeah, they hit on 2 of like the 6 players that they had in the top 5.
And yet they hit on Thibault and Maxey and well, I guess they drafted Mikal Bridges, but
they traded him for Zaire Smith, who's
Hey, you know what? I'll say I was never against the theory of, if you had someone who was player A and player B, like similar ranked, and you could pick up an extra first to move back a couple spots, I'm fine with that theory. But then it was all part of the Tobias trade, and except the process was okay. The results were horrible.
Yeah. I mean, you think about how crazy it is for, throughout the process, Hinkie adding all, piling up all his assets, for us to have made as many mistakes as we've made, draft, like you said, drafting Okafor, drafting Fultz, the Zaire Smith mess up, Okafor, Noel,
Bias.
The Tobias trade, the Jimmy Butler trade, like so many things have happened with his franchise in the last 5, 7, 8 years, and we're still in a position to go get goddamn James. Excuse my language, James Harden today or yesterday. Like, how does that even happen? Like, we should have had no more chances, like 5 chances ago, but because we were set up so well initially, I think it's allowed for a huge flexibility, a huge amount of flexibility in what we've been able to, figure out over the last couple of years.
Yeah, I think it's similar to Phoenix also. They hit on Booker, obviously, and they hit on Ayton, and they traded for Bridges, but they also missed a lot of players. Like, I forget the tall guy from Europe.
Dragan Bender.
Yeah. And there's another
Marquise
guy too.
Chris.
Yeah, Marquise Chris.
Josh Jackson, right?
Yeah.
He's bounced around so much, I forgot he started there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
and then they came in and were like similar to the Sixers, where we got, I think, the last 2 drafts, we got real lucky getting Maxey and hitting on Thibault. I think that was lucky to get some, later on guys. It's not the same exact thing, but it's somewhat similar to me, where it's like a guy like Campaign, who bounced around a lot in the league, didn't really know if he was really even a NBA player, finds a home there and really makes something out of himself. I think in the last 2 years or so, kind of just turning those less probable stars, or players that are not, you wouldn't expect as much from, like a late first rounder or a dude that's bounced around for 5 years, into serviceable players that stick around and have value. It's huge.
Yeah, even Cam Johnson, I think he was a mid first round pick. People were hating on that pick, but he's literally the player that any team could use right now.
I wanted the Sixers to draft him, man. I love this game of the Carolinas, but yeah, he's a killer.
Yeah, I mean, I guess Sacramento's in that same group that they're trying to make the play-in, just trying to make the playoffs, I guess, for the 15 years, I guess.
Yeah.
But
I hope they don't.
It's just classic Kings. Just classic.
Yeah. I hope they're just permanently doomed to never never get to the playoffs again. Like, they don't deserve it. You know, their fans might, but the franchise itself doesn't. Is never doing anything right. But
Yeah,
I don't really have much to say about the freaking Kings, dude. They stink. You know what I mean to tell you.
They keep making win now trades after win now trade. And like, I kind of, the group they ended up with post, after the DiVincenzo trade, I actually, it's fine. It's okay. But you're
maxing out at like a 35 win team.
Yeah, you're maxing out at like, maybe a 7 seed and a non, play-in setup, whatever. And I guess maybe if you're the Kings, that's fine. And like, the one thing I was surprised is I don't know why they kept Rashawn Holmes after you make that trade for Sabonis, because now, maybe the just offers weren't out there right now to move them. And maybe in the offseason there will be, but like, the idea of a 5-man group of Fox, DiVincenzo,
Barnes,
Barnes,
Sabonis, and
like Sabonis in whatever wing is like, It's fine. It's okay. It makes sense. But,
It ain't good.
Kings gonna Kings.
It ain't good. You know what I mean? Like, it's fine. It's fine, but it's not good.
Yeah.
Probably like you said, 35 wins.
Although that is an improvement. They went from these are disaster moves to it's okay. Right.
It didn't permanently kneecap your franchise. Like that. If you look at it from that perspective of like, well, it's not the worst possible outcome, then everything looks good.
I mean, maybe trading Halburn, who still had 2 more years on a rookie scale deal, and plus X number of years of team control after that.
The best player,
but yeah.
The best player they drafted in like 20 years.
I'm not even necessarily the biggest Halburn guy either, but just like a young guard who is flexible in multiple different lineups with at minimum, 5-6 years of team control versus a center who is not good defensively, who only has 2 more years under contract. When you're not in a position to win right now, it's not a very great value proposition.
I know that he's a good player. I know he's an all-star, but like, there's not a player I get less excited for in the NBA. I don't think that Domantas Sabonis, like, if you told me the Sixers were trading for Domantas Sabonis yesterday at the deadline, I would have lost my mind. Like, I would have gone crazy. It's like, what is that? It's like such a non-needle mover. Like, I know he's good. Like, he's a fine player. Okay. Like, he's a good player, all-star in the East. He's not winning a title.
He would have been a great 76er, right in the mediocrity. He's like almost kind of he's kind of like the new Nick Vucevic, like the Nick Vucevic of like 15, 2016.
Like, he'll be hanging around in like 7 years and still getting like 28 and 16, but you'll be like, man, his team's 20 and 62 this year. What's that about?
Yeah.
We'll see, man. A lot of these players are actually 4th options, but like, there's nothing you can do about it, I guess, with your team. Like, unless you're tanking, basically, you can't really get that number 1 or number 2 guy.
Yeah.
And you know what? Sometimes you don't have the best intentions, right? Or you you turn into Memphis, right? You get lottery luck and you get John Moran at number 2, and I think they were supposed to be like 8th in that draft or somewhere in that general range, right? And it takes one stroke of lottery luck to maybe you were directionless or maybe not sure which direction you were going, and then you get that lottery luck and boom, all of a sudden everything
can change.
They did a really quick rebuild. I mean, you were talking about that. Like, they went from the Zebo, Marc Gasol, Conley to tanking for like 2-3 years, and then they hopped right back in. And now Ja's an MVP candidate, which is crazy.
Yeah, I'm a little surprised they didn't get anything done yesterday, and not that they like necessarily had to, but they had the pieces to get something done. And with the extra, like, they don't need 3 first-round draft picks this upcoming draft. They don't have the roster spots for that. And I don't think the picks they're getting are going to be meaningful contributors necessarily. But I mean, I guess if the right deal's not out there, the right deal's not out there. And you don't want to totally upset the chemistry you got with the group you had. But I was a little surprised some of these teams didn't do anything. I guess. And maybe the asking prices were weird, or they were waiting for the Harden-Simmons shoe to drop and just like, okay, now what?
Too late.
Yeah.
A lot of the teams in the West didn't really do much. Like the Warriors didn't do anything. I know Phoenix got Aaron Holiday, who was pretty decent backup guard. But yeah.
Lakers didn't do anything.
Yeah.
No.
I just saw the thing about whoever on ESPN talking about, it's like, oh, and the Lakers will shift their focus to the buyout market, and Richard Jefferson and Kendrick Perkins is supposed to start laughing.
Like, right. Like, yes, go get some more guys that are in their 17th year in the league that were good 6 years ago, and it'll all work out. It'll all be fine.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know why they made that trade when they saw Phoenix and like Milwaukee, and like the biggest thing that stands out is that they're just athletic. They can run, they can defend, they have multiple skill guys. They're not just like, I feel like the NBA is getting away from these guys who just have one skill and just, you know, stand in the corner or whatever. You got to actually put the ball on the floor and move it around.
Yeah.
But,
yeah, two-way ability is the new best ability in the NBA. Yeah, the more, again, that's why like now, like, I regret of like the Sixers not hiring Ty Lue, but just like I love what they're in general building there for next year, of just like they have 7 guys who between 6'4" to 6'9" of just like can dribble a basketball, can shoot, can defend multiple positions. I love the way that they're building their own roster in that way.
yeah, they don't even have that much name.
Obviously not
talent,
for this year, but
yeah.
for going forward. And again, it helps when you have an owner who doesn't really care how much you're spending on the team.
Yeah. I think that'll do it for us. I guess the last thing before we go, I know Garrett's probably going to pick the Rams, but Dan, you picking the Rams too?
No, I'm going Cincinnati.
Fair.
I want to root for them. I'm always like an underdog kind of guy, so I'm going to go for. But honestly, don't care either. Now I'm thinking about it. Don't care. I want Matt Stafford to get a title. He's been a great quarterback, I think, his whole career, and kind of was like underrated and kind of like crapped on in Detroit just because Detroit's just always like they're cursed. So I want to see him do well. Either way, I think I'll be happy with the winner. I like Joe Burrow, like Matt Stafford, like all the players, and hope. I just hope for a good game. Really, that's all it comes down to, I guess.
Yeah.
I'm hoping for a little bit better Super Bowl than the last time the Rams were in it when they couldn't score a touchdown.
Yeah.
And that was even though it was my team, I was like, this is the worst Super Bowl I've ever seen.
Well, now they have like 2 of the best receivers in the NFL, and put up points.
Any given Sunday, we'll see.
Yeah. You never know.
Yeah. I mean, I think it'll be a really good game, but yeah, we'll see. But yeah, thank you guys for joining me. Hopefully, have you guys maybe on in a couple weeks previewing intense playoff matchup.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Yeah, appreciate you guys coming on. You can follow Garrett or Dan on Twitter. I'll put their handles in the bio. See Dan complaining about Ben Simmons or something like that.
Yeah, it'll just be like 12:45 at night or like 2 a.m. It's just kind of random. Like when it comes to me, it comes to me. So fine.
Dan, I love the Hey Arnold Helga thing you were doing with the. How many days since Ben Simmons talked publicly?
It's been like 231 days, man. It's really like. Yeah. It's been like, I know he like does Instagram comments and likes and this and that, like had a couple press releases, maybe. Doesn't count until you're like out and your real face is in like on camera speaking. Doesn't count till then.
We'll see his introductory press conference if he says anything. But yeah, thank you guys for joining me. You guys can find the podcast on Apple, Spotify. I'm gonna post it on YouTube. So yep, check it out, subscribe. And we'll catch you guys next time. Appreciate it.
Hell yeah.